Gundam is one of the most recognizable names out there. It is a name synonymous with big robots fighting one another during the 70s in a period recognized as the Mecha Golden Age. Since then, Gundam, I feel like, is a shadow of its former self. Gundam is a franchise that stems decades and has many, and I mean many, shows under its belt. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's not as confusing as Fate, but my god, there's so many shows in just one line. Because of this, you have more people, more anime fans to be more specific, that recognize Gundam as a name rather than having seen the actual show. And I'm saying this because I'm one of them. I love big mechas, I love robots growing up, but I have never seen a Gundam show growing up. The first Gundam show that I did my toes into was actually I Am Blood Orphans, which was made by Sunrise in an attempt to attract a new audience by having the show not being related to any of the other Gundam shows that have already come out. I didn't finish it, but from what I've seen, it's a really, really good show, and you'll hear more positives from people who've actually watched or finished the show because it was really good. Despite this, I don't think that it attracted a large enough audience that Sunrise would probably have wanted. Despite the show being really good and receiving some good reviews by people who have seen it, it's one of those shows, looking back at it now, it's unless you're interested in that genre and that style of show, you're probably not going to watch it. If Sunrise were to going to bring back Gundam to a larger audience, they needed to do something different, something special. And in 2022, they did just that with the release of Witch from Mercury. Gundam Witch from Mercury was released back in 2022 during the fall anime season, and it caught people's attention. To my knowledge, this was the first Gundam show that Sunrise had released since Iron Blooded Orphans back in 2015. And much like Iron Blooded Orphans, Witch from Mercury is an independent show, basically not being related to any of the other Gundam media out there, much like Iron Blooded Orphans was. Speaking as someone with almost zero knowledge of the Gundam world, I really like the show. I think it's a really, really good show. I like sci-fi, I like big mechs, and this show had it all, and it definitely caught my attention straight out of the gate with its first episode. The first episode sets up the scene of what the series is gonna be about. You're introduced to Slita Mercury, who's from Mercury, and she's enrolled into this new school. On her way to the new school, she bumps into a girl by the name of Muriel Rembrandt who was trying to escape from the school. We soon learn that she is the daughter of one of the most powerful people in this world, and not only that, but who is also the headmaster of this school. Because of course he is. We also learn that the school usually settles things with duels, with mecha duels to be more exact. Whether it be something small as, oh, if I win, you're gonna give me $50, or something big like, if I win, you're gonna give me your whole ass company. Anything can be settled with a duel provided that two parties agree with it. And the champion, basically the top dueler, also known as the holder, is promised Miorin's hand in marriage, which is why Miorin isn't really a big fan of this and is trying to escape the school. The first episode pretty much explains all this, and while it might not sound interesting on paper, you really have to watch the first episode yourself and judge it for yourself because, in my opinion, the first episode really delivered and really showed the promise and the potential this show had. The show's animation immediately captured my attention. I am familiar with how good Sunrise is with Gundam, having seen I Am the Orphans before, but Witch from Mercury took it to a whole new level. The style is much more similar to a lot more mainstream anime. While this means that the show probably won't stand out as much for in terms of character design, it does mean that it attracts more audience because it is a style that people are familiar with. As unique as the character designs in Iron Man Orphans are, I feel like the people might not be too into that because it's different. It's different from the conventional norm, hence why people probably aren't going to watch it simply because it's a style that they're not familiar with. And Wishman for Mercury is the opposite, hence why I think a lot more people were willing to give this show a shot in the first place. The main draw of the show, of course, or at least half of the draw of the show, is the fight scenes. Big, clunky mechs fighting one another is what we know Gundam or what we associate Gundam to be. And this show has some of the best fight scenes that I've seen in 2022. When you think about big, clunky, complex design robots fighting one another, it's easy to assume that they will use CGI in order to animate these fights, and a lot of shows have done this already. But Sunrise, if you're familiar with any of the Gundam shows, they don't do that here. They don't use CGI. Most of the fight scenes, or if not all of the fight scenes in Iron Blood Orphans, is done fully 2D. There might be CGI 3D mixed into it, but it is, from my knowledge, from what I've seen, fully 2D. As someone who really likes mechs, I love this because, again, it's easy to assume that they would use CGI for at least half of the fight scenes because there were so many fight scenes in the show, but they didn't. They completely made sure to make it 2D, or at least seem 2D, to make sure that the fights are just really good. Sunrise and the people responsible for the show are 100% determined to make the show the best that it could be. And the first episode, to me, delivered. It had everything that you wanted from a Gundam show, or at least everything that you hoped for a Gundam show. And when you watch the first episode, it's enough to intrigue you, to entice you to watch more. Now, of course, Witch from Mercury, much like a lot of other Gundam shows out there, it's not just about big mecha robots fighting one another. Much like a lot of Gundam shows, it deals a lot with the political aspect of things, and mecha, the Gundams, are just used as a way to settle disputes, to fight. In Witch from Mercury, Gundams are entirely banned because of the system that they use called the Gundam system. Gundam, Gundam, get it? So this system is essentially a death sentence to its pilots because it takes a large toll in their body to pilot these robots. And those who are pilot these robots are dubbed witches. And most of these people are girls. Don't ask me why they're girls. I don't really know either. And in case it wasn't obvious, Soletta is one of these witches, hence the title, The Witch from Mercury. There's also this conflict going around between Earth and the other Spatian colonies and whatnot. And it's really interesting to see how big and how massive this world actually is. And as someone who really likes sci-fi, it's really nice to see the world building in the show. Now, I do not know if the story in Witch from Mercury is tied with other Gundam shows out there because I personally have never seen them. But as someone who hasn't really been exposed with a lot of Gundam shows, a lot of Gundam storylines, the story for this show is pretty easy to understand, or at least simple enough to understand. It is sci-fi, so they're going to use a lot of terms, a lot of acronyms, a lot of mumbo jumbo to explain what's going on, and that might confuse some people, but unless you caught up to that, it's a pretty enjoyable story, and it's a really interesting story to watch unfold as the episodes go on. The story as it stands is diving deep into the political dealings of things, backstabbing, political intrigue. Everything behind the scenes that's going on is fascinating for me to see, and it really makes me question what's going to happen next. Saying that, however, the first part of Gundam Witch from Mercury barely had any of that. Yes, there are hints and mentions of stuff going on, but for the most part, it wasn't really explored in the first half of the show. Instead, most of the first half of the show takes place in this school. Most of the characters, most of the things, events that happen take place in this school. There's some stuff that happens outside of the school, but they aren't really explored until very late into the first half of the show. And in the final 2 or so episodes, it's where you start to realize what this show is actually all about and what this world is actually all about. The reason why I assume this whole thing is taking place in a school is because, again, it's to attract a larger audience. The school setting is a very popular setting in anime, and it works because it attracts a lot of people to watch it. And not to mention, they also have 2 female leads, which pretty much guarantees people are going to watch your show from the get-go. The show has a lot of mainstream elements into the show, but at the same time, they are also making sure that this is, at the end of the day, a Gundam show, a show that fits the Gundam world, the Gundam style. Saying that, and while there are some interesting stuff that happens during the first part of the show, most of the show could boil down, at least for me, as slice of life. And what I mean by that is that it's focused largely on getting to know the characters and whatnot, and getting to know the school and whatnot, which didn't really interest me. I like slice of life. Slice of life is my favorite genre of anime, but this is not what I came to Gundam for. I came this for the political intrigue, the big mechs fighting one another. And while it does have the big mechs fighting one another, the political aspect of things were almost non-existent apart from a few things here and there. This was a far cry from the OVA the show had that was released prior to the anime. The OVA explains certain things and why certain things happen, and I hadn't seen it before I watched the anime, so when I did watch it and I compared it to the anime, I was surprised because a lot of the themes in the OVA were not present in the anime at the time of me watching the OVA. So I was left with disappointment for a short period of time. Like I said, there was some interesting stuff that happens, a lot of hints going on, but at the time, with no idea if season 2 is going to happen, I was left wondering where the show was going. That being said though, season 2 or part 2, whatever you want to call it, did happen and it explained a lot and explored a lot more of the questions that we had in season 1, which made the stuff in season 1 feel more worth it, which makes a lot of the slice of life stuff that you go through in season 1 pay off because you're seeing some of the effects of it in season 2. As of right now, we are currently at the second part of the show and we are diving deep into the political intrigue of stuff. We are pushing the school side away and are focusing on the grander scale. Some characters are playing bigger roles than they did previously and the story is beginning to shape itself. More secrets are being revealed and the story is just getting more and more interesting. It remains to be seen, however, whether Gundam the Witch from Mercury is able to deliver on the hype and is able to continue on this track and really cement itself as one of the best sci-fi animes, at least in recent years. But I do know one thing, and that we are finally seeing Gundam returning to mainstream anime. And if you're asking me, it's about damn time. Thank you guys for watching this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.